All right. Welcome to the second podcast, or the second of an infinite number of podcasts we're going to have with DarrenChervain. I introduced him last time, and if you haven't seen that one yet, let me just briefly tell you that he's a kinesiologist. He's Canadian born. He's a kinesiologist, and kinesiology is just means muscles, the study of muscles, but and it's a branch of physiology. Okay, so physiology is how the body all works together. And some people specialize in the cardio aspect. Some people specialize in the liver, different parts of physiology. The thing about kinesiology is that it actually encompasses them all, because to understand kinesiology and its full effects, it the biochemistry that occurs in the liver is it is in large part because of the muscular activity, and that it affects the psychology, the cognition, the neurology. Yeah, there's no part of the body and the way it functions that is not related to the muscles So, and I always remind people when they are reticent to move, I always remind them that imagine you're a torso and you don't have arms and legs. What would you give to take a walk to the store or to carry the trash out? You'd give everything you have. So we take for granted that. And it's not, it's not our fault, because we were born unfortunately, into a century where in 1900, the average person was a self-reliant individual who read, who moved around, who knew how to make their own clothing. And if you told them something, they would question it. And, it was just, we were different people. And then we were on purpose turned into consumers. And in order to be a good consumer, you must, first of all, enhance someone's vanity, because got to have that new t-shirt. And we moved. And then there's another thing called the great indoor dislocation. So what's happened is we've moved from living outside to inside. So there was a study done where they asked mothers, how much time did they spend outside as children? And I think it was like 60-70% of them remember spending a lot of time outside. But those same mothers say that only about 25 or 30% of their children do. So there's been a great translocation inside. And that has been, that along with the technology has turned us, has made us so much. It does not allow us to achieve our potential as human beings, because it's an artificial environment. Remember, our bodies are nature. They come from nature. Okay. And both healing only comes through nature. In fact, one of my favorite mentors in life was Herbert M. Shelton. And, basically what I learned from him is that only nature heals, only nature cures. And so what we try to do is we try to bring back, we're going to say, okay, here we are. We live in an urban setting. We're living this world. Okay, there's not much we could do about it. So, but what we can do is learn to approximate a natural life in these artificial environments. And that's exactly what Darren's always teaching. Instead of sitting at a desk for 8 hours and then going to the gym and for 2 hours freaking out, I mean, both are equally unnatural. Because if it was 6,000 years ago, there was no such thing as exercise, because living involved movement and lifting and climbing and all that sort of thing. Now, we don't even want to take the trash out. We've got to have a remote control to change the channel instead of getting up and walking to get to, eventually we're going to have this really long index finger. We're just going to touch things, and that's all we're going to do. Anyway, that's not satisfying to us. And even the young kids who think they're happy and satisfied, they're really not. Because the laughter that I remember when I was a kid in the 50s and 60s, the laughter and the fun that we were outside pretending that, okay, this stick is going to be my sword. And our imaginations were going and our bodies were going, and we had nothing except to play. And that's Darren's, if I had to think of anything that's Darren's motto, it would be, let's start playing. Let's remember, let's play like children. And in order to be like children, you have to abandon all your concepts of ego and vanity and how do I look? It doesn't matter how you look. Who was that? Who was that comedian? He said, it's better to look good than feel good. He was being facetious, of course, but that's really what we've become, right? I don't care how I feel as long as I look good. So here's the irony. If you live the life that we're talking about, you'll look the best you could ever look. So that's the irony. anyway, with that said, this is what Darren is, and he brings an element to our healing center that is not only essential, but I don't see it anywhere else. I don't see people talk when they talk about healing, they don't talk about bringing in movement. So we're going to talk about that. Now, so today's topic is going to talk about the psychological impact of learning that you have what they've made us believe is a terminal condition. And that's why I am always changing vocabulary. I want to make sure if I'm talking to someone, number one, we have the same language, and number two, we have the same definition of words, right? And then we can communicate. So I'm always looking at making sure we say the right words. And so now, but I just want you to know that that word cancer is only it's a zodiac sign. It falls right between Gemini and Leo. Okay. That's never what's going on in our bodies. Okay. But when you hear that word, you get a emotional frontal lobotomy because you are so afraid. Okay. And that fear kills you. There's two things that kill people when they have what we call chronically fermenting cells. Number one is fear, and the other one is the treatments. That's it. So anyway, what I want you to know is that we have those of us who have evidence of our chronically fermenting cells, because we all have them. But those that have evidence, that means we have 1 gram or more. Okay. But that's all it is. It's a chronically fermenting cell. It's nothing else. And it's not fatal. It's not fatal. And I'm saying that not because I uh, read about it, but I've seen it. I've seen it. I've seen people that were told they had 3 weeks to live. And I'm talking to them 8 years later from Paris, so it's not fatal. And you have to understand that I would never say anything that I don't know to be the truth, but if I don't know it, I'll tell you I don't know it. And because why? Because I don't think there's any other reason to communicate than to try to communicate to each other the truth as we know it. I mean, maybe one other way might be trying to make people laugh. I think that I like doing that too. So anyway, when a person hears that word that they use, I don't even like to use it, just like I don't like to use the word disease because that's a myth. All of it, what we're talking about, is physiological adaptation to a situation where our biological needs are not being met. And that's what happens. It's a necessary, it's not a foreigner. It's how our body maintains equilibrium and homeostasis. Okay. So all we need to do is to change the environment in which the cells live so they don't have to make that adaptation. That's all. It's really that simple, but it's not easy because we grew up in a world where we're living unnatural lives. And it's that living unnatural lives that causes our bodies to need to adapt. Right. So, well, in fact, Darren is going to be joining me in Thailand, and along with Vanessa, his wife, she's got so many titles and roles, but she's a nutritionist, self-educator, yoga.
Yeah, do a pot of con noodles and see what sticks.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, the good thing about that is what we're going to do is our first center will be in Bangkok, and our second one, which will probably open about a year later, will be in the middle of the jungle near an ocean or a lake, and people will come there, take their shoes off and leave them off, keep their feet on the ground. And you're going to have a 3-month experience of being an authentic human being. And once you have that and you've learned new habits, now you can go back to that world and be okay. And that these chronically fermenting cells will not come back because they won't have, they are an adaptation. They're not an alien. They're an adaptation. Okay. So we're going to make sure they don't need to adapt. So when you hear the word, I call it the Rockefeller word, cancer, what you're really hearing is that you're going to die. If you look up the definition of post-traumatic stress syndrome, that's exactly what it is. When someone's faced with a potential circumstances like war, terrorism, those kinds of things, the psychological trauma from those series of events, um, can cause not only chronic fear and wild dreams, but eventually you wind up with mental exhaustion, and your cognition goes way down, and it's just I think it's a major role in what uh is our ultimate demise if we hear that kind of word. So, but I wanted to bring up another subject, and that's why when I do the lives, I always refer to all of you out there who have this condition as our heroes, because I don't think I could do what you guys do. It'd be really hard for me. So I mean, I'm like, every day I talk to people who've been battling with this or trying to achieve balance over 6 years and 8 years. And so what do we call that? There's actually something. When I first thought about it, I said, well, there's post-traumatic stress syndrome. But what we have, you folks, is you have the post-traumatic stress syndrome when you first heard the word. And so you're living off that, but you have current traumatic stress syndrome or continuous traumatic stress syndrome. So you're having that instead of having one series of events that you have to keep reliving that wipe you out psychologically and they exhaust you physically. But you guys have it every day. So it's like current, and it's like geometrically much more serious than post-traumatic syndrome. And I'm not downplaying post-traumatic stress syndrome because it's horrible. It can ruin people's lives. But for you guys, you're having it every day. So now remember that we talked about the mind, the body, and the spirit, right? As if they were separate. And it's like, it reminds me of Sigmund Freud. He came up with an idea of the id, the ego, and the superego. They call it the topography of the mind. Well, there's no place where the id is and the ego's here and then the superego. Those are aspects of its whole and total function. But he had to use those words so he could talk about it, just to be able to talk about it because of our limited capacities of thinking. So the mind, instead of saying we have a mind, body, and spirit, understand that we are a mind, body, spirit complex, right? It's a complex. It's one whole system. Because is the body physical? What's that? Well, it's a bunch of electrons flying around proton. And what happens when you open up the center of it? You have Nagasaki, Hiroshima. So how does that differ? And then what is the mind? Anyway, I'm just here to say that. So what we're going to talk about today is how to bring those all back together and restore harmony between those aspects of ourselves. And that's very important because if we remain fragmented, which is what the medical profession does, right? They send you to the cardiologist, then he sends you to the dermatologist, the nephrologist, and all, we think we're all these parts. Well, we're not. We're one system. And that system is not just physical. It also affects our mind, and it affects our spirit and the relationship between that in that complex. So even though we're going to talk today, the physical aspects, we're going to show you how it can help you with the mental condition that results from post-traumatic stress syndrome and current chronic traumatic stress syndrome. Okay. Which is, I think, geometrically way more than the other, because it's like, and then other people come to us and they say, I have chemo brain. Well, yeah, you have the effects of chemotherapy on cognition, but also the fear. And also what else? You feel tired and you can't get up and you can't move around, and people are waiting on you or trying to take care of you. And you wind up not using your body. And so that in itself is almost equal with fear in terms of damaging your ability to survive. So, as Darren often calls them, movement snacks. We're all into eating snacks, but movement snacks. And we're going to kind of show you how movement can, and that's what I was saying about kinesiology. That's the muscle, but what is the biochemical effect it has on your brain, which is the apparatus by which your mind is able to work. So anyway, it's amazing. And I think maybe all of you or most of you have experienced how good you feel after a good, you've moved around. It's like In fact, I was reading a study, I think it's a study that Darren showed me, where the just movement was more effective than any of the psychotherapies or any of that in terms of cognition. I mean, imagine that. Imagine that. So anyway, with all of that, I'm going to turn it over to Darren, and what I'll do is, ask questions that I have that I think you might want to hear. I'll just interrupt here and there, but I'm going to leave this up to Darren now.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me again. I absolutely have a blast on these because not only do I have so much fun with you and we get to, egg each other on, quote unquote, but the other thing too is yesterday when we had our discussion, okay, this is what we're going to, this is what we outlined and we're going to talk about it. But you looked at me and you challenged me right away. You said, well, what does that mean? And what he exactly said is, let's make sure we're speaking the same language. Let's make sure because I think it's very misleading, or it's wrong on my part to assume that I understand what you understand, or vice versa, right? And once again, and that's what learning is. That's what learning this new lifestyle is all about. Is we are going to use movement to enhance the brain and the brain to enhance movement so we can adapt this more natural lifestyle. I'm playing pretty simple. It's just play. It's that simple. And I think this is one of the first times I've heard you, refer to the heroes out there, and that just blew me away. And so I'm constantly writing notes now about what, these nuggets that they hit me like that. And I'm like, boom. Absolutely incredible. When we finished our last podcast, we talked exactly what you talked about, cognitive impairment and the chemo brains. And then this discussion about PTSD is very important because you talk a lot about it, Dr. Lodi. This is where we're going to heal the brain, the mind, the spirit, the body. And I'm not able to control this, but there are certain things that we can do that will help tune it down a little and perhaps even get that more conscious contact with God. So we can heal. So we can heal. The first one I wanted to look at with PTSD was just a narrative analysis of the studies out there that look at how does movement actually help the not only the symptoms of PTSD, but also to help people lower their arousal levels so they're not anxious all the time. So they don't feel that threat, right? And the other one that was very interesting is showing how it helps to enhance sleep quality, which I think is extremely important. And as we've discussed and you point out a lot, everything works together like this. So we can't take one piece of the puzzle and expect it to work. It's the complete puzzle as God designed us to be. This complete whole person. So the first study was really interesting because, as we've discussed in previous podcasts, when we move our body, it's going to have specific physiological outcomes. And one of them is reducing the amount of inflammation that we have. And very simply, we go out for a 10-minute or a 20-minute walk, and it's going to help to reduce inflammation. Not only will it help to reduce inflammation, but what it's also going to do and is to help with our rate of respiration and circulation. Okay, so it's going to get our heart working a little bit more. It's going to force us to take in more oxygen. So when we're moving, increased rate of respiration, but what that also means is when we are not moving and when we're left to our own devices up here, this turns on and all of a sudden Darren starts to get freaked out. Guess what's happening? At 2 a.m, looking at the ceiling. So it's realizing that movement will actually help to lower our rate of respiration at rest.
Right.
So we're not stimulating that sympathetic overdrive. So we're not jumping into that limbic system of the brain. So
Let me
even
let me say one thing quickly about inflammation, because most people don't make an important distinction. Like, because most people are thinking of chronic inflammation. Now,
Mhm.
acute inflammation is absolutely necessary. It's how we heal, right? And it's got four cardinal signs, swelling, pain, heat, and swelling, pain, heat, and what's the last one? Pain, swelling, heat, and tumor. Yeah. So two more really just means growth. So that's why you can have a benign tumor or a malignant tumor. So tumor
Mm.
just means growth, right? I mean, if I had like a skin condition where I had a mole, that's a tumor, but it's not a malignant tumor. But anyway, those four cardinal signs are necessary, and they're all due to the fact that the blood is rushing to an injured area, and so it gets swollen, and blood is warm, so it gets hot, and it's the pain is a message to us. The pain is a message to slow down. So, for example, if you sprained your ankle, that pain is going to keep you from walking on it because it needs a time of rest. So, anyway, acute inflammation usually is about 3, 4, 5 days, and then it resolves, and you're healed. Okay, because our body's self healing. But now, if I keep hammering my finger, it becomes chronic inflammation. They call it. Well, what happens is now that my body's saying, "Well, wait a minute. I can't seem to heal this thing, so I got to protect myself from it." So it starts to grow calluses. But inside, in your body, chronic inflammation makes tissues grow, makes CFCs grow, and all that. So chronic inflammation is what we usually mean when we say we want to reduce that. But acute inflammation, we need to heal. And so we have to think about that. And what Darren's referring to is the fact that all chronic conditions, whatever they are, the underlying physiology is chronic inflammation.
Yeah, very good clarification, and what that I like that. That another good lesson for me to learn. But when I'm using language, thank you. Yeah. So not only is it going to help to reduce the chronic inflammation, but we talked a lot about rate of respiration. And think of it this way: even from a simple 10, 20-minute walk, and believe me, there's nothing simple about it. There's so many just biochemical reactions going on in just simple 20-minute walk. Think of what it's doing to my posture, right? Think of how it's forcing me to be upright and take in more oxygen. And what an experiment I like to get people to do is put your hands in your front pockets, and how much oxygen can you get in? We don't get in that much. We don't get in that much. So it's looking at how, if we can increase our oxygen, and how we're breathing. And perhaps Dr. Lodi, you'd like to talk about breathing, the best way to breathe.
Right, right. So yeah, that's a good point. So it's interesting. Breathing, we think that we're pulling in air and pushing it out. But really what's happening is the lungs, if we increase the volume of the lungs, air fills, nature abhors a vacuum. Air goes in. So actually the air going in is a consequence of just increasing the volume. And so most of us are breathing like using what are called accessory muscles of respiration, right? And that involves your sternocleidomastoid. That if you want to know, so okay, but that doesn't give you the same volume as diaphragmatic breathing. And what is a diaphragm? It actually separates the abdomen from the chest, but it's a muscle that is like a dome. Okay, and that's it. It's relaxed. So when it goes like this, it opens the volume of the chest tremendously. Air flows in, right? Now, the other thing to remember is that every time you're diaphragmatically breathing, that muscle contraction back and forth stimulates the cisternochyle, which is the vessel that collects all the lymph from your lower extremities, your pelvis, your whole left arm, your left side of your head. And it all goes in and it dumps into a big vein. Okay. So every time you diaphragmatically breathe, you're giving that a pump. So it's actually a lymphatic exercise. It's amazing. And then the only time you need to use the accessory is you when you start taking that walk or that run, and if you're not getting enough oxygen, you'll be doing that. And it's very interesting. Anyone who's ever been doing movement for a while, they realize that what used to make them out of breath no longer does. because they've increased the efficiency of their cardiopulmonary work, you know.
And that's the efficiency of our of getting oxygen in and delivering nutrients around the body is also tied into the mind as well, and the brain. So it's incredible. You're just touching on what you said is, let's not fragment the body into separate systems. This is the body.
Yeah.
This is the body. So it was really interesting to look at and that. So another effect is what it's going to do on not only, as we discussed, inflammation, inflammatory markers, but maybe we can go into, you can give us a very quick outline, the HPTA axis, hypothalamus pituitary. Yeah, I think that's very important.
Right. So it's actually called neuroendocrinology. Endocrinology refers to hormones. Neuro refers to the brain. So in the brain, there is something called the hypothalamus. It's right at the bottom. You got your cortex, and it's right at the bottom there. And it is sensing the hormone levels of the body. And when it sees that, oh, there's not enough estrogen, it sends a signal to the pituitary. And then the pituitary sends a signal to the ovaries. That's how it works. And then the ovaries start pumping out estrogens. And when the hypothalamus says, wait a minute, we've got enough now, and it sends a signal to slow down. So that feedback mechanism is exquisitely well refined. It's amazing. So yeah, that's the axis. But it's not only ovaries, it's also thyroid. They're all. So our endocrine system, one thing to keep in mind with it, the theme we're talking about today, I think, is that the body is one system. But if someone's going to just work on your thyroid, it'll never get healthy, because it depends on the adrenals, and it depends on all the other hormones, the pituitary hormones. So if you're going to tune an orchestra, you're not just going to tune the brass and the woodwinds. If you don't tune the strings, you're not going to have a beautiful symphony. So you've got to tune all the instruments. And so so a good, what do you call it? A good way to, or the only real way to reestablish health, is to tune up every system and get it tuned. Because guess what? God made it perfect. And the only reason we're not well is because they're out of balance, they're out of tune. And movement is, it's so essential that if we look at people who don't move, what happens? As soon as they're not moving, their muscles begin to shrink.
Yes.
And the muscles are so important for generating multiple biochemical processes that affect every part of the body, and most especially the brain. So your ability to reason, your ability to remember will decrease. And there's probably a direct, what they call inverse correlation between movement and cognition.
There is.
The less you
There
move,
is. There is. And I think if we look at what you talked about, neuroendocrinology too, I'm going to make an assumption here, is that most people living in where we're living in this modern world that's supposed to be easier for us with technology, but most of us are living in fear. And what is that doing to our nervous system? What is that doing to our hormones? What is that doing? Not only that, what is that doing to our relationship with people, with nature, with God? Disrupting it. It's out of balance. Out of balance. And it's very interesting that you talked about, muscle. So not only do we see a benefit from even walking or quote unquote aerobic movement, but we can also see it from resistance. And as we've always discussed, resistance training doesn't have to be at the gym. I can do it climbing trees. I can do it climbing stairs. I love my stair climbing. People have come to appreciate that, our stair climbing. But it can be lifting chairs. It can be lifting tables. It can be lifting groceries out of our car and walk the stairs into the kitchen with them, and then putting them away. But what it was found is, with the resistance training, I'm just going to open up this study, and we'll share this on the podcast. I'll make sure we link all the research papers that we're discussing, is that this is really interesting. It lowered hyperarousal compared to the control group. So this was a group with resistance training, strength training. And I love this is it large improvements in the sleep quality. And I think that we need to understand that if we aren't sleeping, we will not heal. If we aren't sleeping, as I said, Darren's mind is going to get the best of him. 2 o'clock this morning, I was staring at the ceiling. So it's okay. I know my sleep has been disrupted. We know that I've got a 2-hour disruption in my sleep. I'm going to see a decrease in my NK cell, natural killer cells. We know that it's almost the same as being under the influence of alcohol when we're sleep deprived.
Exactly.
We're not making great decisions. We're not, we're a little, myself, I can just speak from my experience, irritable. I'm a little angry. I'm on edge all the time. What happens when I'm angry, on edge? Boom, more adrenaline, more cortisol gets sent in. Liver responds, dumps more glucose into my bloodstream.
Right. And, yeah.
Right.
And sleep deprivation, they have sleep deprivation studies. In fact, I think it was used in World War II. They use it as a method of torture.
Yeah.
When you sleep, two things happen. The body gets restored and the mind gets restored. That's why the two aspects of the sleep cycle are restorative sleep and dream sleep, right? And the early part of the evening is 80% restorative, and the latter part and early morning is more dreaming, even though both have a little, aspects of the other. So if I go to bed at 11 and I wake up at 7, I had many dreams. So I wake up in the morning. I don't hate everybody. I can be in a good mood, but I didn't get enough restorative sleep to restore my body from the wear and tear of yesterday, right? So sleep deprivation has a severe physical impact and a severe psychological impact. So because I tell you something, if just like restoring your body in the restorative phase, the dreams, don't try to figure out what they mean. They don't mean anything. They're all of your regrets. They're the things that you've held back, all that. And it's all messed up. It's all like, and like you can't say what you want to say to your boss. You can't say what you want to say. You hold it in, you hold it in, you hold it in. And then you weren't able to pass that thing years ago. And you're wondering if you're going to make all of that stuff is just played out in our dreams. And we try to make sense out of them, but they don't make sense. But you know what? They clear out the mind. It's like a mind enema. It's like they cleanse our mind. So sleep. And then when they have people that are sleep deprived, they literally can't think. They can't do anything. And they have no energy. I mean, yeah. So if this can help it, and it can, right?
It can. And something we talked about in an earlier podcast is let's just be aware, though, that perhaps doing specific types of movement close to the time I'm getting ready for bed might not be the best idea. In my case, I've got to keep it very, very, very relaxing and restorative. So evening walk, that's all I do. I'm not looking to do a lot of push-ups before I go to bed because I get too aroused.
Right.
And I'm not gonna go to sleep. So for me, it's evening walk, and then it's just slowly calm things down. I'll make it half a page in a book, and then I'm out like the light, out like the light.
But if you were active all day, you would actually be tired and able to sleep, right?
Yes, and that. I made that was something that we'll talk a little bit about when I bring up some of the other studies of just, I really love how you talk about, when we're active all day, it's going to set us up for a better night's sleep, for a better night's sleep, which is so important. So important. So I'd like to just kind of move on now to something that you challenged me yesterday on. And once again, thank you for it. We're going to start talking now about how movement enhances or can actually reverse cognitive impairment. And then you said to me yesterday, okay, but what are we talking about with that? What are we talking about? What is cognitive impairment? So it can be simple things as forgetting things, unable to learn new skills, decrease in motivation, I can be really good at starting a task, but then maybe not finishing it. I think here's a really good example. As I said, now, is it because I'm getting older? I'm having a little fun here. I didn't sleep well last night. Parked the car, walked up the stairs. Oh, shoot, I forgot my house keys in the car. Had to walk all the way back down. Now, is that cognitive impairment? Could be, maybe not. I'm attributing it to lack of sleep last night. Right. So, and it's what, where it really hammers home for me is learning, our inability, cognitive impairment. We have difficulty learning. And about a month ago, we had a big meeting at the clinic, and you really lit a fire under my butt. We're here to get people to learn. We're going to inspire them to learn, to adopt a new lifestyle. The school of life is learning. So what we have to do is look under every rock for a clue of how can we help people learn. And one of the best ways that we can do that is through movement. Movement is learning.
Right.
Movement.
So are there any studies that look at, or that, for example, let's say they have a cohort of people that they put them in a sedentary situation for, let's say, 2 months or whatever it is, and they do a cognitive test or a learning or memory test versus a person who has another cohort that has active.
Okay, not one per se, particularly, but if we look at people who undergo chemotherapy, okay, and this was a really interesting study. So it's looking at testing different aspects of cognitive function, pre-chemotherapy and then post-chemotherapy. What they found is that people who undergo chemotherapy, the ones who remained active, which is very challenging during chemotherapy, the ones who remained active as opposed to being sedentary during the chemotherapy, maintained and improved their cognitive function scores. Okay, we do it's incredible,
And that's important because the chemotherapy is actually a chemical assault. It's not only the tumor, but the whole body, including the brain. And of course, the brain's going to respond. But so what he's saying is that, but movement can counteract that. Because we don't have drugs to counteract that.
We as you like to talk about the vitamin movement. Yeah, vitamin M. We got vitamin M. I'll take 2 right now. I'll take 2 right now. I'll take 2 right now. So it's looking at, there's not a study like that. Or for the next podcast, perhaps I'll do some investigation and do. I would hate to be in that subject and be put in the group that has to remain sedentary. I wouldn't want to take a risk on this. I would not want to take that risk on this, because one of the things I think that we know is that brain is not fixed. For years, it was told, you know what, there can be no change in the brain. Now we know that the brain does change, and that's neuroplasticity. And we can enhance neuroplasticity with movement. And this is the school of life. This is teaching people a new lifestyle. It is neuroplasticity.
Right. And one very central aspect of aging is loss of neuroplasticity. So you can look at it not only as, helping you with, the effects of chemo and all that stuff, but also look at it as an anti-aging or a slow aging or a well aging program.
Slow aging. Now, the one the one study that I love, the one review that I love, and it ties in so well with everything that you discussed, Dr. Lodi, is that demand uncoupling drives neurodegeneration. And what it's looking at is that, very simply, we live too comfortably right now. We're not moving enough. We're not in our environment, out in the environment enough. And that is what it really is. That Alzheimer's isn't genetic, which is very interesting, because that's the same narrative that gets played out with CFC. It's not genetic. It's not genetic. Okay.
No, not only is it not genetic, I'm not sure that it exists, because when I was young, we didn't have that word. We didn't have the word ADHD. We didn't have these words.
Yeah.
And we used to notice that older people had slowing. And the original definition of Alzheimer, when I first learned it, was pre-senile dementia. Pre-senile. So in other words, it was dementia that was occurring in people that were not yet considered elderly. And that was the original meaning. Now everyone's got out, yeah. So, yeah.
So it's very interesting. It's exactly what the School of Light promotes. Let's get outside in nature more. Let's move more. And also a really important one is social connection. Is these relationships that we have with people. And what I find fascinating about this is that we can use movement to put an incredible cognitive demand on all aspects of the whole system. So what would be an example of that would be really, really simple, and everybody can do right now is just get up from our chairs, right? And I'll do it. The camera's not gonna, and just walk backwards across the floor. So it's so simple, but it's just that different perspective of kinesthetic awareness, and also how am I able to relay where my body is up into space, into the brain to balance as I'm walking backwards.
Right.
As I'm walking backwards.
Now, just to clarify a term, kinesthetic awareness, what that means, remember we used the word kinesiology, right? So we're referring to muscles. And so here's the thing that humans do. If you drive cars, you only drove that car, I think, the first week or two that you learned, because that was done consciously. So that required a coordination between your mind, your brain, and your body. But what we have to remember that our mind, only 10% is conscious, 90% is subconscious. And so once we learn something with our brain and it becomes, we get it, now we don't think about it. So when I first drove, I had both hands on the wheel. I'm looking out the mirror and, some of this. Now I can drive with one hand and text. I'm not supposed to be, but I can do all those things because I'm not driving the car anymore. I mean, I'm not consciously driving the car anymore.
Right.
I don't have to think where my right foot's going and my left foot's going. Right. So that's the thing. So what Darren's referring to is that let's do something that's not in our subconscious. So that we have to work it. We have to work our mind and our body together.
And the term I like to use is let's get away from mindless movement. What do I mean by mindless movement? Oh, I'll go on a treadmill. Yeah. Right. Where it's pre-programmed. I don't have to worry about balancing. And it does it for me. So really interesting working with an 84-year-old. And he told me the other day, he said, oh, I was walking, doing my laps around the neighborhood. And then all of a sudden it dawned on me, I'm going to walk backwards down the street. I was like, high five. And I said, first thing, did you notice how you were probably veering all over the road? And he said, yeah. I said, that's normal. That's normal. But the more that you play around with just walking backwards, maybe walking side to side down the street, it will become more natural. And that is learning. That is neuroplasticity.
Yep.
That is neuroplasticity.
In the sense that you're now creating new pathways. And that's the thing, because the way the brain, which, believe me, there will never be a computer like our brain, but the way our brain works, is that once you learn how to do something, there are pathways. So if you start in this one direction, you do it like that, and then we call them habits. But what it means is that consciously we worked at doing some consciously where they want to do a specific set of movements. So anybody that's good at any sport, they weren't day one, but once they got good at it, and and the thing about an athlete though, they almost never, maybe never, allow it to go into the subconscious. They're always aware when they're running and whatever they're doing. An athlete's, but you finally get to the point as an athlete where you don't have to think about it and you're moving perfectly. But you only got there because you had to use your mind and your body to get there.
And by the same token, what we see is if we're not moving differently than what we're accustomed to moving, we come into something called neural pruning. We're not using those neural pathways anymore, so we don't use them anymore. So they're
They have
pruned.
to.
They're
They have
pruned.
to.
Yeah.
Like the muscles. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's one take home I would like people to think about movement and the brain is just walk backwards through a room differently.
Right.
That's just let's
Well, no,
start.
I remember when I first started working with you and um, you gave me an exercise to crawl. So I had to, and it's not crawling with your knees and your hands; it's your feet and your hands, right?
Yeah.
Crawling. So what he said is, the way we usually do it, right? Is we do it's usually your right arm and your right leg, right? That's the way we normally do it. He says, and do it the opposite. If you do it the opposite, now I had to think about everything I did, and I wasn't good at it. So
Oh,
that was a big one.
it's incredible, and with some of the people that I play with a lot, and I develop that rapport with them, and I tell them quite up. I say, listen, if you're not giving me an FU with some of the things that these funky movements and playing around, then we're not helping your brain. So
Right.
there are times when we're moving. We want to feel very, very, very awkward. We want to be like, oh, wait a minute. What the heck is going on?
No.
What
No,
the heck?
it's like you often refer to doing something on an unstable surface.
Yes.
It's like if you're walking down the road, like you were saying, you've done that a lot. Yes, you're increasing blood flow and all that. But if you're walking or trying to do something where there's different levels,
Yes.
now you've got to be engaged.
Yes. Now not only are we completely engaged, we're mindful. So I really can't worry about oh shoot, I shouldn't have said that yesterday. I look like such an idiot, or what's gonna happen. It's like, listen, I don't concentrate and focus on what I'm doing. I'm gonna be eating pavement.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be eating pavement. And it's really interesting too that when we start challenging ourselves like that, not only what it's doing for the muscles, not only what it's doing for our bone health. Think of we've talked before about bone health. Bones like different forces traveling through the body, not just same old, same old. So not only what it's doing for our bone health as well, but think of it this way: is what is it doing for my brain health? So all of a sudden, where did I put my keys? And it's like, oh, as Darren is getting older as well, he's incorporating more of the unstable movements because that has been shown to improve working memory and processing speed in aging adults.
Right.
Aging adults. So
But look what children do.
Yeah.
When children are playing, I don't think I've ever seen children playing outside where they don't do some balancing thing. Like they get on a fence. They're always trying to, and you realize that they're doing exactly what you're saying. Naturally.
Naturally, and let's get away from the scientific jargon of neuroplasticity and all that. It's fun.
Yeah.
It's fun. It's fun. It's fun. So it's looking at how unstable resistance training improves working memory, processing speed, and delays response inhibition. So what would be a very simple way of doing that would be, well, what about if instead of doing a push-up onto a table, what about if I do one hand on the table, one hand on a chair? So I'm off center. If I can do a push-up off the floor, what would it look like if I raised one leg? What would it look like if I had a different position of my hand? Just simple things like that. So at an oasis of healing, I bring in a lot of unstable movements to help train the brain. And some people will say to me, oh, that looks dangerous. And are you sure that's safe? And I'm saying, my response is, if we don't do this for your brain, that is dangerous.
Yeah.
That is dangerous. That is dangerous. That is very, very dangerous. Right. So take home from this one as well is let's try to move different vectors, different planes of movement, forward, backwards, side to side. But let's also think about, well, maybe doing my stair climbing, I take 2 steps going up. Think about the balance required for that as opposed to just 1 step going up. Maybe I play a little bit when I'm walking down the stairs instead of just thumping down like I do, like an elephant at times. Maybe I take it very slow. 3, hit the stair, and then I quickly go down to the next one, and then a 4, slow. Just different speeds, different tempos, different rhythms. I wanted to do a quick follow up. Last podcast, I was talking a lot about Margaret, the young lady from Chicago. I don't want to use her name. 81 years old. We finally did a final grip strength from her. She put on 5 kgs on her grip strength, all from predominantly stair climbing and just moving more. And I had a call with her. I connected with her this week. So she's been back home for a week and a half now. And I said, well, bring me up to speed. What's going on? She's sharing now every day with me her daily step count, just because she's doing a lot of stuff around the house. And that's the key, Dr. Lodi. Let's just move around the house. We don't have to overcomplicate it. I did point out to her though, I said, how is the stair climbing going? She said, I don't feel very stable without having somebody here. And I said, okay, well, get your granddaughter there. They just live 5 minutes down the road, just once a day. And I want you to start getting back into the stair climbing. Why? Because it's moving her body through 2 different planes of movement. It will challenge your brain a little bit.
Okay, so explain that. What do you mean 2 different planes of movement?
So not only are we moving forward, we're also moving vertically as well, right? So think about what's happening for the brain as she's doing that. And then she said to me something that's very interesting. She said, I have to use the handrail. I'm like, that's fabulous. I'm using the handrail. I've got to generate force horizontally for that pull. And then with my legs, vertical force transmission. Incredible for the brain. Absolutely incredible for the brain.
So, in other words, the old expression, use it or lose it. And, and of course, we know that goes with muscles, right? The person that's been bedridden for 3 months, they've lost muscle mass because of not using it. And then, even if they were eating. So that's a very important thing to understand. You can eat, you can get the nutrient, but muscles require movement. And I just want to mention something about exercise or movement. By the way, exercise is only necessary, and it's never necessary, but it only became a thing when we became artificial. So natural human beings don't exercise. I mentioned this last time. I was in Vanuatu and I was looking for some land, and I was with the natives, and those natives just wore a thing around their waist, right? There were these men from like 16 to maybe 30. Their bodies look like we all want to look at.
Yeah,
the guy that goes to Gold's Gym, and they don't even know what a gym is. They got it from living, and so that's the point. And so you can eat all you want, healthy, but if you don't move, it won't get used. It won't arrive at the place it needs to arrive at. You understand? So, like for example, we were talking earlier about mood and walking, and so just think of this one thing. When you're walking, it requires more blood to keep the muscles going, which is going to affect your heart. Your heart has to pump it, right? And all that. But that means there's going to be more blood flow to your brain. And that blood flow to your brain means it's going to wash out the toxins and bring in the new stuff, and it'll get it moving. So just walking gets every aspect of your body. So there's no way you can't even comprehend how significant it is unless you talk to a quadriplegic.
right.
Ask them. I mean, and could you be in a good mood ever if you were quad? The only way you could is you'd have to be in continual prayer or something. But I mean, we have to remember that, when we talk about gratitude, hey, I've got 2 arms and 2 legs. Even if I have only 1 arm, I got that. In other words, and I get, and guess why I have it? Because our muscles are actually, if you thought of an engine that operates, they drive the whole system. They drive metabolism, right? They drive waste elimination. They drive everything. So it's a very underestimated, or it's not even considered. They just say, you go to most holistic doctors, you go, "Yeah, well, you should exercise and eat right." Okay. All right. No, because you haven't said what eat right means, and you haven't said what exercise means. And anyway, so what we do is we actually teach the reality of of those things. We're not going to exercise. We're going to play.
We're gonna play, and
Do
and
children
and
need to exercise? No, that's all they do. If you want to,
yeah,
if you want to say it, they're always moving around and balancing and
ants in their pants, and that's
yeah,
what I tell
exactly
everybody: have ants in your pants. Yeah,
right. And and what are they saying? They're make believe this is that maybe that, so
yes,
they're improving
yes.
their imagination. I mean,
So here's another simple one people could do. Very, very simple. I'm just looking at the floor right now, and I've got wooden tiles. And it doesn't have to be a specific, it doesn't have to be any type of tile. Just walk on your tippy toes along tile lines. And imagine on one side we've got lava, the other great white sharks. Don't fall in, right? Don't fall in. And just balance, walking along the tile. Try going backwards. It's very, very simple, but bring in that element of play, because when we are playing, that is going to impact our mood.
no, Darren, explain some of the basic physiological and or biochemical events that occur in the brain with movement that improve cognition.
Sure, sure. So if everybody remembers, or if you don't remember, it's okay. When we move our body, muscles will contract, and they're going to release something called a myokine. So imagine we're at a sink right now, and I've got a sponge, and I squeeze it, and all the water comes out. Think of that. Muscles release myokines into circulation. Okay. The muscles release these myokines, and as Dr. Lodi said at the start of the podcast, these myokines have an effect on the whole body, not just muscle, or in my arm, or in my chest, or in my butt, or in my legs. It's the whole body. Some very interesting ones, the myokines that are released. One is called irisin, that we talked about a little bit about last time. And irisin has this incredible ability to affect with neurogeneration in the brain. So
That's great. So it stimulates what, neuroplasticity or
yes,
biogenesis?
yeah, and it helps to reduce the inflammation as well. So the irisin is released from the body. How do I get that? Let's not make it complicated. I go for my 20-minute walk. I climb a couple curves, balance on the curves, do a couple skips down the sidewalk, and then we're going to get some irisin release. Let's keep it very easy, right? And play. Let's keep it very easy and play. Another myokine that is released is something called BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor. So that's another one that's going to be released that also enhances neuroplasticity. One that blew me away, and it really surprised me, is lactate. Lactate has this neuroprotective effect on the brain as well. So we have to remember that the body, even at rest, will low levels of lactate. But when we're moving, and as we've talked about, what about a 30-second sprint in the grass? That's going to release lactate. Yes, my legs get heavy. It's uncomfortable. But think about what that's doing for my brain. So I'm doing this not only for, stimulating those type 2 muscle fibers, but I'm also doing it to stimulate my brain, keep my brain healthy.
So for everybody, lactate is, when they use the word like sodium ascorbate. Well, ascorbate is vitamin C, right? But it has to be connected to sodium, right? So it becomes It's got a negative charge, the ascorbate, so it has to be attached to a positive charge. If it's attached to hydrogen, it's called ascorbic acid. If it's attached to sodium, it's a salt, right? So lactate is the same thing. Lactate is the negative anion that attaches to hydrogen. It's called lactic acid. And so that's what happens when you produce lactic acid, it's actually painful to the muscles.
Yeah,
But you're saying that when that lactate goes up into the brain, what does it do in the brain?
it's going to help with memory, and it has a neuroprotective effect as well. So it's very interesting that, as we've discussed before, it's when it's released from muscle, it has this incredible effect on the body. Whereas 20 years ago we used to think, oh, it's just a metabolic and waste product, and it really doesn't have any benefit. I've also seen some really interesting studies where they're using it for brain injuries as well. So it's fascinating. So take home from this one is, do a couple of 30-second or even 15-second sprints in the grass, shoes off. If you can't do that, what about walking upstairs, as we discussed at minute 10? And that young 81-year-old from Chicago used to tell me, oh, my legs are getting heavy. I'm like, okay, 10 more seconds. You're doing great, but think about what it's doing for your brain. And she, okay. Yeah. Think about what it's doing for your brain. So I want to tie everything together now. We've talked a little bit about mood, but think about it this way. I'm moving my body. It's helping my brain. It's not only helping the rest of my physiology. What is it doing to my mood? And very, very interesting study looked at how mood impacts mitochondrial health. So they were able to quantify a mitochondrial health index. And what this study looked at was people with a better mood had healthier mitochondria. Vice versa, I'm not having I'm not a great mood. Maybe I didn't get enough sleep. I'm irritable. I'm angry. Or my favorite one, I watch the news too much, and all of a sudden my mood's going down. Look what it's doing to my mitochondrial health. So recently we did the class at an Oasis of Healing. We talked about this. We looked at the research, and then we all, I love this, brainstormed, with like action steps we could take. What would be something very simple that we could do to enhance our mood, to enhance my mitochondrial health? And some of the steps were very, very simple. What about we dance? Let's have a dance party. I'm a huge proponent of having a dance party. What about we go outside, get some fresh air, but more importantly, vitamin D. Let's get some sunlight, direct exposure to the sunlight. Prayer, meditation. Let's laugh with each other. You talk about how important laughing is. Laughing is the best medicine.
No. Yeah.
Laughing is the best medicine. When I hear a joke, usually it's an off-colored one, and I start laughing, look what happens to my posture immediately. I'm getting in more oxygen. Thoracic mobility, I'm increasing how much oxygen I'm getting in the body. Neurotransmitters are released when I'm laughing. Another really simple action step was be of service to people, and that'll immediately improve your mood. And something we've talked about, here's a great movement snack. Here's a great, workout of the day to do. Grab a bag, go around your neighborhood and pick up trash. Be of service. Be of service. So it's very important that we can understand that what's happening up here is going to have an immediate impact on my healing.
When you think about movement and brain health, just thinking about, closing your eyes and thinking common sense. So I'm moving, so my muscles need more blood. So my heart has to beat faster. So my whole body's circulation increases, which means the circulation in my brain is going to increase. What that means, more nutrients will be brought there and more waste will go away. So that's just a very simple thing. But the other thing was that it stimulates these hormones. So when we say mood, we're saying how do you feel? Are you happy or sad, or basically like that? Well, it turns out that the word that we use for the mental feeling of happy, there is a physiological biochemical correlate to it. That's because you're producing dopamine and serotonin. Okay, so that's the physiobiochemistry of it, right? And so serotonin is the feel good hormone. And in fact, if you look at antidepressants, these horrible drugs, um,
Shocking. Yeah.
they're actually called, what they do is they SSRIs, they actually, serotonin, a neurotransmitter goes from one nerve, it's a chemical that's released, and then gets picked up by the other nerve, and then it has the same reaction. So it's the way nerves communicate, right? So different neurotransmitters have different effects on the nerves. So the two that are really make us feel wonderful are dopamine and serotonin. And then the other thing is this: we make our own opiates and we make our own cannabis. It's called endocannabinoids and it's called endorphins. And they, like the woman who, the old story of the woman sees her child pinned under the car and goes and picks up the car.
Yeah.
And the reason it is very interesting. What limits our strength a lot of times is pain. You can't go past the surfboard because it's burning. Well, when she saw her child there, she flooded with endorphins, which are endogenous opiates. She
Mhm.
didn't feel any pain, and
Yeah.
she had more strength. So, but imagine all of these things are happening. So why are you in a better mood? Because you have more serotonin, you have more dopamine, and more endogenous opiates, endogenous cannabinoids. So that's why I always say that muscles are the engine of metabolism.
Well, and that's a great analogy. So think about very simple. I want to get in a better mood. We know that exposure to sunlight is going to increase my levels of dopamine. I can't do that without using my legs to actually walk outside.
Right. Right.
So it's but once again, it comes back to what you were saying, the study about, mothers and children outside, and we don't spend any time outside anymore. And just we don't
Right.
we don't
And
spend
yeah, we also, it's a reflection of this artificial world that we live in. I was thinking the other day, and I'm asking some of our students, which we don't refer to them as patients, because a patient is a passive thing,
Yeah.
right? You're the doctor, and you're going to fix the patient. Well, first of all, it's impossible. They're not broken. Their body's adapted to what it is. But they're students, and we're all students. We're all students of life.
Yes.
And that's what they are. And so that's the one thing they forgot to teach us in high school, right? You get your diploma from high school, and you have what's called a general education. That should include, how do I live? What's the bet? But it doesn't. They say nothing about how do you live. So that's why we have this school of life. So we teach you all the aspects of living that we didn't learn. Why should I go to bed early? Because the medical profession thinks that we, the public, are stupid. So if you ever read WebMD or any of those things, they talk to us as if we're 3 years old, 4 years old, and we're not really, we're all really smart. And so I don't think that doctors or lawyers or anyone know anything. They're not smarter. They just have a different vocabulary. That's all. So if I can explain the body in terms of plumbing, electricity, gravity, I mean, they're all the things that we all know about. But doctors like to have their jargon. And the minute everybody understands it, they'll change the word. Right? Low dose chemotherapy. Well, God, if I use that word, everyone will know what it means. So let's call it metronomic chemotherapy. Why? Because you're given low doses like a metronome. So now you mention that word as, oh, my doctor just told me that.
Yeah.
And oh, he's so smart. It's the way it is. So anyway,
What,
but that's the thing about exercise. Yeah.
yeah, and I would think too, maybe all of us can be like that 3 or 4 year old. I would like to be that 3 or 4 year old. And then here's a really simple one people can do. Get maybe about a 4 foot piece of plumbing. You can get it at any hardware store. Put it on your hand and just walk around trying to balance. And you're going to be moving in different directions, trying to keep this stick on your hand. And we'll take our guests, our students, I'll take them across the street to the park, and we're walking up hills doing that. And you should hear them laughing, dog. You
Right.
should. You should hear them laughing. You should hear them laughing. Yesterday, at our dance party, I said, listen, guys, I want us to have so much fun today and blow the roof off this place. I couldn't believe how loud and raunchy it was in the dance party yesterday. But one of our students looked at me and just said, that was so much fun. And
Right.
that's what we've got to get more fun. It's good for our brain. Let's keep it simple.
Right. Right. Because listen, fun is the opposite of sad or afraid. It's all those. And what do we know about that? Negative emotions, so sadness, fear, anger, envy, regret, all those things directly suppress natural killer cells. They inactivate T cells. I mean, they slow down the dendritic cells and the macrophages. Okay. So every time you're like that, you're suppressing your immune system.
Mhm.
And the opposite is true. If you're laughing, if you're having fun, if you just got great news, if you're with someone that you really love, all of that stuff throws it through the roof.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So that's why like and as Jesus said, unless you become as little children, you cannot enter the kingdom of heaven. And you know what I love about children is that, and why can they learn 5 languages simultaneously, effortlessly? Whereas if we could try to learn one language, we've got to use all this effort. Why? Because they don't have an agenda. They don't
Yeah.
they don't think they already know. They don't know how it should be. Therefore, they are 100% and hearing it. 100%. We don't even know what that means. We're never 100%. We're like, unless you're reading a book and it's good for you. You like the book. You're not sitting in that chair anymore. You're you're off already. That's 100%, right? So when we do things 100%, then we're actually in that moment, right? So children are always in the moment. And so what do we try to teach them? Oh, it's time to eat. And they don't understand time to eat, but I'm not hungry. Time to eat, right? Or it's time. In other words, we teach them this concept. All we teach them is calendars and clocks. And what do children know? Well, it's now. It's not 3 o'clock. It's now. And they also, when you're telling them anything about what they like, you can't do this now, but we'll do it in 2 weeks.
What does
They,
that mean?
they don't understand that. All they heard was no.
Yeah.
No. So, we have to understand. So that's the beauty I love of a child. Like, for example, when it comes with, if I went up to a child and said, what the whole world is calling cancer is actually loss of mitochondrial function. So the cell has to ferment. And so and then it adapts and becomes good at it is called the CFC aura. So how would you fix that to a child? And a child would, being uncomplicated, would say, so it's a problem with the mitochondria. Yeah. So why don't we restore mitochondria? That would be a child's answer. And let me ask you a question. Have you ever gone to an oncologist who says, we're going to restore your mitochondrial function?
Yeah.
It's not even in the vocabulary.
Or hopefully the little child would say, oh, I don't know the answer to that. Let's go play. Oh, there's the answer right there.
Right. There it is. Right.
Let's go play. And I think one of the ways I wanted to finish today's podcast was something that you talk a lot about. And this is a great example of neuroplasticity. When you say, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. Imagine, the amount space you're leaving for God to fill in the blank for you. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
you've met people who, so when the cup's full, you can't put anything into it. So you can't. So a student is the person that says, I don't know. So if you remain an eternal student, then you will be open to learning. So, if one of my staff said, comes up to me and says, I don't agree with this. I say, fantastic. Let's go talk about it. Because listen, I'm always ready to learn, right? Because do I have it figured out? No. Will I ever have it figured out? No. Only God knows, right? But so we're all here learning, and let's not remember, even the teachers are students.
Mhm.
And if they're not, if the teacher stops being a student, she won't be a good teacher, or he won't be a good teacher.
That's it. That's it.
You have to
That's it.
And which what Darren is always talking about is playing. Because playing is being in the moment, just enjoying being alive. That's what,
Yeah.
playing is, right? And we don't do that.
No, gotta be serious. Gotta be
Right.
serious. Yeah.
We're too cool for that.
Oh, way too cool. And I had a great teacher who would always point this out to me. He'd always say this. He'd say, "Hey, brother, don't let your look good kill you." It's just
Right,
like,
right.
oh, man.
Right. And what really looks good? What really looks good is watching someone trying to do something and having fun, and they trip. And when they trip, little kids do when one of them trips, they all laugh because it was
Oh,
fun.
yeah,
They
it's
don't start
awesome.
saying, "Oh, you're stupid," or they don't do that. They
Yeah.
love the mistakes are fun, and they're not
Yes.
mistakes. What they are is part of the learning. They're not. It's not like it was
Yes.
wrong. You needed to make that. You needed to fall so that you won't fall next time.
Yes. And that's movement right there is we never lose our balance. We're always finding our balance.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. We're always finding our balance. Yeah.
So I'm gonna look up. I'm very interested in this. I want to look up your studies. I want to read your studies that you've
Yes. Yes.
he has me studies every day, and I just I
Just
don't
like,
have it. But do it. Keep doing it, because
I'm
one
doing
day,
this all the time. I'm like, tick, 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 tick. Yeah.
one day I'm gonna have a chance, to be on the plane rides or something. But because the thing is, I'll tell you the truth. For me, probably other than being outside, like in nature, probably the most fun thing for me is learning.
Yeah.
I love when I sit down with a book I'm about to read. It's like one of the best moments, you know, that I have of the day. If I can sit down and read, and in order to read, what do you have to do? You have to shut up. Because when people say I'm not a good reader, it means you can't stop talking in your head to read,
Mhm.
right? That's what it means.
Yeah.
So it's like when you're listening to a beautiful song. You ever listen or symphony or something like that? You turn off your mind, and whenever we turn off our mind, we're in a place called bliss, right? And
Yeah.
that's where surfers get to. When a surfer gets
Oh,
really good, they can't think. If they think they're not gonna make it. They just have to
that's
be like
it.
this skier. When they're skiing,
Oh,
you lift off. You better not think. You just have to, and that's being in the moment. And that's why we want to keep doing it. Music is in the moment, right?
yes. Yes.
Music is not. You're not waiting for the last chord. Right?
Yeah.
Dancing, you're not waiting to wind up on a particular place on the floor. It's
That's it.
there.
That's it. And incredible cognitive benefit to dancing as well. And it's, as I said, let's get past the scientific jargon, but it's fun. We're bringing people together when we're dancing, but also head fake, incredible what it does for the brain.
Yeah.
Dancing. Yeah, absolutely incredible. Absolutely incredible.
Yeah. So being an adult is, children remind me of the story of humanity. Uh, Children are still in Eden. Being an
Mm.
adult is getting kicked out of paradise.
Yeah.
They're in paradise because they get to live now.
Oh,
They get
they
to
get-
learn.
they got
They don't have
earth under
to
their
pretend they know it all.
fingers, dirty toenails. It's awesome.
Right. And see, there's the word we use. Okay, in the Western world.
Yeah.
Dirt is a pejorative term.
Yeah.
But so we would say, "Oh, you're dirty," but why don't we say, "Oh, you're earthy. You look great."
Earthy, yeah. Be
Earth.
natural.
Yeah, because dirt. Oh, yeah, you got dirt on you. But if it's earth, and the reason we can't be so, we've got to understand that guess what happens when the breath of God leaves your body? This turns back into earth. So we
There it
are
is.
what you call earthlings, right?
Yeah.
So if you get some earth on you, that's fine. That's fine.
Yeah.
And in fact, guess what? It's going to have bacteria in there, a microorganism, and you're going to get exposed to them. Some of them you'll need, they'll stay there, and some are going to challenge your immune system. For example, we look at studies of the immunity of kids that grow up in a ghetto versus kids that grow up in middle or upper class. The ghetto have the strongest immunity. They don't get
Yeah.
atopic dermatitis and all these things that we get in the middle class.
Yeah.
They don't get that. Because they're exposed to everything. So yeah.
Let's get some more earth. under our
Yeah.
fingernails, under our toenails. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Last thing I'll share is Vanessa took Peanut to the park this week, and there was a little girl, and unfortunately, her mom's already got to her. But Vanessa was taking her shoes off, and the little, oh, she's taking her socks off. And Vanessa was like, this is what kids are designed to do. She's already been taught,
Right.
already.
How old is she?
Oh, maybe about 4 or 5 years old, Vanessa said. Yeah.
You see, that's the shoulds. And children, there are no shoulds,
Yeah.
right? As they say, don't should all over yourself, right? So
Perfect.
there are no shoulds. What is there? What is, right? And nothing should be something else. Everything is what it is because who? God made it that way, right? And if that should have happened and it didn't, that means it wasn't necessary according to God. Because whatever unfolds on this earth ever is his plan. Or it's not his plan.
Yeah.
He didn't do it. I said it's not a he. That's the problem with our words. He's not a he, or doesn't have a gender. There's no he. I hate, we got to find a new way to say it. And I understand atheists because they're saying there's no guy up in the sky with a long beard. They're right. That's not what we're talking about. So we're going to have to come out with better words for that. That's what I mean, defining terms. So that's why when people talk about God, they all have multiple understandings of what that means. So before you have a discussion about God, figure out how you're going to agree on what it means. And then you'll have, what you'll find out? That you agree. You both agree. That's what you'll find out.
That's it. That's it.
One thing I want to say about sports was Darren was saying earlier that when that movement and all that also improves your personal relationships with people as well as everything else. And that's kind of what sports do. My objection to sports is that the fundamental principle is to win, and there'll be a winner and a loser. I would prefer that sports were teaching us all, like giving us a project that we need each other to complete. I'd rather we're taught to cooperate rather than to compete. Because the ultimate sport then is war. That's the ultimate sport. And so I'd rather we were trained to do these vigorous things, but we needed each other. So how do we cooperate? Like, I'll lift you up and we'll do that. Let's figure out a way. So how we do it together instead of I'm better than you. It creates division, and it's just not good. So
it's not very healthy. Not very healthy. Unbalanced, I'll say. Very unbalanced.
And if you're the winner, how long does that last?
Yeah.
Right? Like you won the, I don't watch sports. What's the American football? You win the, what's the last playoffs called?
Super Bowl.
Yeah. Okay. You win the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And that's fantastic for about a day.
That's
Really?
it. Yeah.
It's over. It reminds me, listen, I don't know if you guys are old enough to remember there was a song by, I forget her name, Peggy something. Anyway, the name of the song was, Is That All There Is? Yeah. So she said, when I was a little girl, I wanted to go to the circus so much. My dad took me to the circus and I went there and at the end I said, is that all there is? Right? So in other words, the point is this, it's the journey, right? Any destination we arrive at, what are we ready for? The next journey. So we have to realize that, right? So you get married and you spend 8 months, 10 months making the marriage plans and all that. And it's one day it's over. As I used to remember when my mother would be preparing like a holiday, like a Thanksgiving holiday. She worked all day and it was not, we finished it in 1 hour.
That's it.
I felt sorry for her. That worked. 1 hour. So that's the thing. So, and that's really important too. Destinations are not what we want. We really want the journey.
That's it. That's it.
That's what we like. Yeah.
Yeah.
So movement, exercise is a requirement.
Yeah.
And it's not Darren said it. I said it. God, because he gave
God said it. Yeah. And if you disagree with him, just look at your own life as an example. It's very unpredictable, and that's what movement teaches us: how to pivot to the unpredictableness of life. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's why I think probably one of the greatest sports is surfing
Oh,
because it's completely uneven. Your body has to feel it. I want to go that way, but the wave's going that way. I better go that way.
that's it.
And
That's
what is
it.
that? What is this? I can imagine that if you were, if you could learn to surf life, then you would never be miserable. You just,
I mean, that would be the ticket right there. I'm still working. I'm not there yet. I'm still working on it on a daily basis. Yeah.
because we've got all these shoulds.
Oh,
We're full of shoulds,
yeah.
right? No,
Yeah.
no, there's no should. There's what is, right?
That's it.
So,
That's it. Well, this has been great today. Thank you so much.
yeah, no, it's wonderful. And so each podcast with Darren, we're going to talk about the different benefits of movement. So here we're talking about cognition. You'll think clearer, your memory will improve.
Oh,
Well, I'm sure there's studies where they have older adults versus said that some that are active and some that are
oh,
sedentary,
yeah.
and their scores on tests or
Well,
memory.
well, I think I shared it in the last podcast, and this is what really, really just sealed the deal for me. And I had to change some of the movement I was doing to incorporate it, is higher your grip strength, lower your chance of Alzheimer's or cognitive decline. Just sign me up.
That's great.
Sign-
But that also the greater your longevity
Yes, yes,
and a much better prognosis if you have a condition
yeah.
such as CFCs.
Such
And,
as
and,
CFCs. Yeah.
and Darren, remind them about grip strength. It doesn't mean you have to go squeeze in a tennis ball.
No. And this is, and it was really good. I sent to you Thursday. Oh, my memory's gone. I got to do more movement. Kidding. I'm kidding. I think it was Thursday. We were on a meeting and you were talking about exactly is what grip strength is really measuring is how much force I can develop with my arm, but it's a reflection of the internal stabilization and which requires even more force shear in my body. So grip strength is measuring overall body strength. How do I increase my grip strength? Walk upstairs, carry some groceries. Very simple.
Right.
Very
Yeah.
simple.
Right. And actually, you think, well, my legs have nothing to do with my grips, but a squat, doing squats,
Yes.
is going to take the
Yes.
knee. So just think of grip strength as a thermometer to find out what your body temperature is.
Perfect.
You know,
Perfect. And that's exactly the approach we took with the 81-year-old from Chicago. And I've got I shot a really good video that I'll get the editors to insert right now of her talking about grip strength and I'll save it for the video of how she's able to open vitamin C packages now. And she's just like, I'm amazed. I didn't think just doing that for my legs would help with that. Yeah.
so Darren, explain to them because I would like people whenever we have this podcast, I would like people to have some take homes that they can do. So
For sure.
tell them what the name of the machine is, where they might be able to get it, and they can
You
look
can-
at and they could take a pre, and then they could do movement for maybe a week or two.
Yes. So when they're looking for something called a hand dynamometer, it will you can get them online. I won't say a company. You can get them online. Very, very easy. You put in male or female, you put in your age, you adjust it so it fits in your hand. And what you're going to do is you're going to squeeze as hard as you can for a count of 3. 1, 2, 3. And what I want you to think about is as you're squeezing, accelerate through it. Okay. Then what you'll do is you'll do 3 tries with the right, 3 tries with your left, take the best score and then combine them. And that will give you a total score. And then I'm getting a little confused.
Wait a minute. So you take the best score, and then what?
Then take the best of the right, best of the left, add them together, and that will give you your final grip strength score. And that will be your benchmark measurement that you can use. Okay, well, let's see what happens after 3 weeks of incorporating these 3 simple movements. Minute 10 stair climbing a day. Let's do walking backwards throughout the day. And let's also do balancing with the stick. Just walk around balancing a stick.
So how long should they do each?
Oh, let's just play walking backwards. Maybe takes 2 minutes. skip in your kitchen, skip in the grass, 2 minutes. That's it. That's it. Maybe do 10 skips, take a break, 30 seconds, a minute, then do another 10 skips. All right.
And what was the other one? Stair climbing. How long?
Like stair climbing, minute 10. I like my minute 10 is stair climbing. MK cell, 6-fold increase.
Right.
So
70 seconds of stair climbing was a 6 times increase in natural killer cell function.
which is incredible. And then the other one is just get a piece of tubing, or it can be a broomstick, and just balance on your hand, and you're going to be amazed at how fast you have to move your body to balance this. Those quick movements are stimulating those type 2 muscle fibers throughout your body, which are going to enhance your grip strength.
Yeah. Okay. So we, Darren's been talking about all these different things we could do to improve our cognition. So I'm asking him now, can he give us some take-home lessons that we could do this week and next week and start to use this in our lives? Because it's not just theory; it's really practical. And I want you all to feel the benefits. And that thing about the grip strength, if you can learn how to measure it yourself, and that's going to tell you if you're improving your chances of living longer, you're improving your chances of getting through any kind of serious condition you have, and anyway, it's a way for you to instead of taking your body temperature you're taking your total body strength, which correlates with your longevity. So Darren, what can they do? What can they take on?
Let's keep it very simple and let's do something that we talked about earlier in the podcast. Let's work on that minute 10 of stair climbing, but now let's play around with different tempos that we're going up and down the stairs. So for example, let's play with the tempo of maybe 3 seconds going up each step, right? So I step down 1, 2, 3, next step 1, 2, 3, and feel free, use the hand railing. Same thing when you're coming down if you need to for a little balance. 1, 2, 3 coming down. And that's going to be a huge challenge for balance, proprioception, and as we talked about earlier, that awkwardness. Number 2 is let's work on, just pick a line on your floor, and they can do this for 1 minute. Just walk on your tiptoes on a line on the floor, put your arms up to help balance you. And let's imagine we have lava on one side and great white sharks on the other. As we discussed, as we were kids, playing. And then the third one, let's play. Let's get a piece of tubing, of plumbing pipe. You can get it at any hardware store. Hold it on your hand. And the first couple of times you try it, it's going to fall down. But then let's get to the point where we can balance it on our hand and walk around the house and do that for a minute. The first couple of times it's going to fall down a lot. Great. That means you got to bend down and pick it up. That's also working on our movement. But getting to the point where you can balance it on the hand and then start walking around. And in a park, I highly recommend in a park doing it for a couple of minutes with no shoes, no socks. And don't worry if someone said, ooh, she's taking her socks off. It's all part of the game.
Right. I wasn't born. I don't think any of us were born with socks.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. But anyway, so those 3 things. So what he said, so the stair climbing, remember, a minute 10 is just 70 seconds. So that's not a lot. I mean, almost anyone can do that. And what if you're so weak you can't do 70 seconds? Then when you can just do whatever you can do, right? 30 seconds.
Start it with 10 seconds. And there's an incredible benefit from 0 and from 10 seconds. Right. Incredible benefit.
Even if you don't have a stairway, you have one thing you can step up onto something, yes, and then down, right?
And up and down. It's incredible. Yeah.
So the idea is that you don't, if you're your current condition wouldn't allow you to do any of the things he says, do it for as long as you can. And then if you absolutely can't do it, give us some feedback, because Darren will come up with something that will give you the same benefit in what you can do.
Right. Right. I'm going to come back to the 81-year-old. She's just an inspiration. And what we started her off with too is when she's in the bathroom, just doing a squat up and down off the toilet every time she goes to the bathroom. So an extra sit down and stand up, even if she has to hold on to the sink.
Right. Right. It's
Yeah.
all those. It's all those little things that. But the thing about what he's saying is that is the consistency, because you do anything once, it's doesn't mean that much.
Yeah.
But
But if you,
but if you so how often should they do those 3 movements a day? What how
well,
frequently?
depending on their condition and their and how their energy is for the day, let's look at doing that 3 to 4 times a day. And
Right.
it's only a couple minutes, 3 to 4 times a day, spaced out throughout the day. And let's remember our evening walk, 10-minute evening walk after the last meal of the day. And we're almost at, 20 minutes for the day. I multiply that by 7. I'm almost at 150 minutes a week.
Right.
Very,
Right.
very simple. A great starting point.
And eventually, or if you're in, you have enough physical conditioning right now, you would ideally want to, because most of our jobs are sitting, right?
Yes.
So you would want to like set an alarm or something, and like every minute, I mean, every hour, or if it's an hour and a half, if it has to be, at least get up and for 10 minutes, 12 minutes, go outside. If you can't go outside, do it inside, but do the several things he was talking about. Like last week, he was talking about jumping rope and,
Oh, we did so many things. We did jumping rope, push-ups off a counter, jumping jacks. So something as simple as that. And I think a great way to end is just to remind people, even standing, quote the literature, small but significant impact on blood glucose levels just by
right,
standing. Yeah,
just by standing.
just
Right.
by
And
standing.
remember, CFCs, one of the fundamental principal underlying problems is a dis this the insulin glucose dynamic has been changed, and so now we've got to restore it to normal. So if you can do that, that's gonna be one of the things that will help. But you're not going to hear that at the hospital. You're not going to hear that at any doctor's office, right? So, but do that, and then so you get up. So for 10 minutes, maybe you do 20 jumping jacks if you can. You didn't have to
Right,
do
right.
like 5 or 6 push-ups on the wall, or you don't have
Yeah.
to do hard. You just have
Yes.
to be moving. It's to your capacity, right? And
Your capacity. Yes.
where
Yes.
do you
And
start? You start with as good as you are. That's where you start.
exactly. Where do we start? We just get out. There's the
Yeah.
first step. Yeah.
Right. Right.
Okay.
And one of the ones I love is we can all do this. You stand up, a count of 3, and then sit, and then go back down at the count of 5. And then
Yeah.
you do 5 of those, like maybe twice a day or 3 times a day, right?
Yeah. Do that 3 to 5 times a day. And you'll probably notice too, as we mentioned earlier, oh, the legs are starting to feel heavy. Guess what? That's lactate. Guess what? That's good for my brain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's good. But remember, the lactate in this condition is from exceeding aerobic capacity of the
Yes.
cell, the tissues. It's
Yes.
not with what I call adaptive physiology. They call pathology. It's not pathology. But that's the pathology. So when you get lactic acid because you can't
Mhm.
do but when you get lactate in this situation from movement, that's pretty natural. That was, in fact, that's how we were built. We were built
Yes.
to the point where when you get to the point where you can't get enough oxygen in on time, then your body still wants to make energy, so it's going to produce lactate. So
That's
that
right.
could never be bad for you.
No.
I'm
It's just,
saying
it can be uncomfortable.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But no pain, no gain, right?
Right. And as we talked about, stress changes physiology.
Exactly. Exactly. And stress, we've come to think of stress as being psychological stress, but
Yeah.
the origin of the word came from a guy named Hans Selye. He's a Canadian physiologist, and because when like engineers, when they're building a bridge or something, they're looking at the stress on the
Yeah.
certain beam, stuff like that. And stress just means opposition. Things are opposing. They're opposing, so that it's kind of stress. Psychological stress is the same thing. So, for example, I hate climbing mountain. My friend loves climbing mountain.
That's it.
So For me, for him, it's yes.
Yeah.
So, but psychological stress. So that was psychological stress, right? So I don't like it because I've got some opposing forces in my brain, in my mind, right? So remember, what stress really is psychologically is when you don't like what is. There's other fancy ways of saying it, but when you don't like what is, it's a negative thing. When you like it, it's invigorating, right? Okay, so to break it down simple.
I think what we should do is look at our next podcast. We dive more into stress and how beneficial stress is. I really think,
Right. Right. The benefits of stress instead of the negativity.
The benefits of stress. And I think that would tie in really nicely to the demand coupling drives neurodegeneration. We got to put more demands on ourselves to prevent this cognitive decline.
Right. And I meant to say this earlier. Darren used the term brain-derived neurotrophic factor. I just wanted to help you guys understand. Brain-derived means it's produced in the brain. Neurotrophic means making nerves grow.
Yeah.
And it's a factor that's produced. So it increases that. And that's what we use when it's part of our repair mechanisms. And so they have things called traumatic brain injury, and so to try to bring people back into health, movement is a big part of it, right?
Huge.
Movement does something else. It produces peptides. Our body makes 300,000 peptides, and peptides are just ways of cells communicating to each other. So movement will increase certain peptides. We now have isolated them. We call it Cmax and C-lang. They're peptides, and you can either squirt them in intranasally or give yourself with an insulin syringe a little injection of it. But it just, what it does if you're not recovering from anything, it just kind of makes you clear. Not like a drug would, like a speed drug, but it just makes you clear and you can focus and concentrate. I like to use it if I'm working on a project, right? I'm sure I have ADHD if it exists because I get distracted easily, but it keeps me from getting distracted. But the same thing happens, like he was saying, if you're doing a movement that you have never done before and you've got to think about it, you're here now. You made it.
You don't have any other option. You don't have any other option except space plant.
Exactly.
As I like to encourage people I play with, I hope you have a good dentist to kind of get a kick out of it now.
Absolutely. So listen, you guys, that's it for today. And you don't know it, but we lost contact for a minute. So that's why he's in a different room. And, and I have my maid behind here. So
we're kind of cool how things happen.
Right. But at least we have editors, so you won't know it.
Yeah.
Okay. So next we're going to do with stress. We're going to do the benefits of stress.
Benefits of stress. Yeah.
How can stress be good? And we're not talking about psychological. We're talking about physical. Yeah. Okay.
Excellent.
We'll see you all next time.